Pillar 4. The team. Law 28. Ask who, not how. This law shows how to create incredible companies, projects or organizations the easy way, without having to learn more or do more yourself. At the other side of the table sat Richard Branson, one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the world, adventurer, space traveler, and founder of Virgin Group. I had attended a private screening of a new life story documentary in the heart of Manhattan, and the next day I had asked him for 2 hours of his time to interview him for the Diary of a CEO. He explained, "I was dyslexic and pretty hopeless at school. I just assumed that I must be a little bit thick. I could just about add up and subtract. But when it got to more complicated stuff I couldn't. I was in a board meeting at about 50 years old, and I said to the director, 'Is that good news or bad news?' And one of the directors said, 'Come outside, Richard.' I came outside and he said, 'You don't know the difference between net profit and gross profit, do you?' I said, 'No.' He said, 'I thought not,' and brought out a sheet of paper and some coloring pens, and he colors it in blue, and then he puts a fishing net in it, and then he puts a little fish in the fishing net. And he says, 'So, the fish that are in the net, that's your profit at the end of the year, and the rest of the ocean, that's your gross turnover.' And I went, I got it. It really doesn't matter. For somebody who's running a company, what matters is, can you create the best company in its sector? Somebody else can add up the figures. It helps to add up and subtract, but if you can't do those things, I wouldn't worry too much. You can find somebody else that can. I'm just good with people. I can trust people. I surround myself with really good people. That's the thing with being dyslexic. I had no choice but to delegate. I sat there, stunned into silence. There was something incredibly liberating, inspiring and empowering to hear a multi-billionaire, rock-star entrepreneur, whose group consists of 40 companies, employing 71,000 people and generating $24 billion in annual sales, tell you that he can't read well or do maths well, and that it doesn't really matter. This admission was music to my ears, not only because it was humanizing and honest, but also because it made me feel less like a fraud myself. By my 27th birthday, the company I'd founded was generating hundreds of millions in sales. We employed hundreds of people around the world, and I spent most of my time flying between our offices in continental Europe, the UK, and America. But, somewhere deep inside me, I had a nagging feeling that I wasn't a real CEO because I'm not brilliant at maths, spelling, or most of the operational aspects of running a business. For the last 10 years, I've focused my energy on creating the best products I can, and I've delegated anything I don't like doing and can't do, usually the same thing, to someone who is much more capable, experienced, and confident. This has always worked for me. I've long given up hope of becoming an expert in the things I'm not good at and don't enjoy, but this perspective is inconsistent with the advice I hear from business schools, entrepreneurship books, and success blogs, which typically assert that you need to be good at a variety of things to become successful. I interviewed Jimmy Carr, the stand-up comedian, at my home in London, and he backed this point up with wisdom and hilarity. I think school teaches us maybe the wrong lesson. School teaches us a lesson about mediocrity and being all-rounders. And yet we live in a world that does not reward all-rounders. Who gives a fuck about all-rounders? If you get a D in physics and you get an A in English, just go to English lessons. We'll get you to a C grade in physics. I tell you what the world doesn't need, someone who's shit at physics. So, find out what you've got a natural ability for. What's the thing that you do best, and just lean into that. This statement by Jimmy seems to perfectly encapsulate the strategy I've followed over the last 10 years. The truth is, as evidenced from my 31% school attendance and subsequent expulsion, I'm really bad at doing things I don't enjoy, and that has proven to be a superpower because it's allowed me to double and triple down on the few things I'm both good at and enjoy. In business, especially if you have dreams of creating a really big business, it's not about learning how to do something, it's about knowing who can do it for you. Business is all about people. Every company, whether they realize it or not, is simply a recruitment company. Every CEO and founder will be judged simply on their ability to 1. Hire the best individuals, and 2. Bind them with a culture that gets the best out of them, where they become more than the sum of their parts, where 1 + 1 = 3. Had I hired a 16-year-old Richard Branson and created a culture that got the best out of him, I would have had a $20 billion company on my hands. Founders, especially inexperienced founders, have a tendency to horrifically overstate their own importance. They fall into the trap of believing their outcomes will be decided by their own brilliance, ideas and skills. The truth is, your destination will be defined by the sum total of the ingenuity, ideas, and execution of the group of people that you assemble. Every great idea, everything you create, your marketing, your products, your strategy, all of it will come from the minds of the people you hire. You are a recruitment company, that's your priority, and founders that realize this, build world-changing companies. I consider the most important job of someone like myself is recruiting. I built a lot of my success off finding these truly gifted people and not settling for B and C players, but really going for the A players. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. Steve Jobs. The law, ask who not how. When we need something done, we've been trained to ask ourselves, how can I do this? The better question, which the world's greatest founders default to asking, is, who is the best person that can do this for me? Your ego will insist that you do. Your potential will insist that you delegate. Law 29. Create a cult mentality. This law explains the secrets to creating a truly great culture within any team, company, or organization. You should run your startup like a cult. Peter Thiel, PayPal co-founder. Have you ever wondered where the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid, comes from? It comes from a mass suicide pact, the ultimate expression of groupthink. Jim Jones was the leader of the People's Temple cult. In 1978 he brainwashed his followers into believing that the world was about to end. One day, following his instructions, more than 900 of his disciples, among them women and children, ended their lives by drinking a cocktail of cyanide and the drink Kool-Aid. It's pretty much impossible for a business to become a full-blown cult. Cults are venal, sinister, manipulative, and use psychological brainwashing to control their members. They require the type of leader who prevents followers from thinking for themselves. By contrast, modern businesses operating in a fast-changing, unpredictable, turbulent world require employees at all levels to be able to think independently. The last thing you want, as a leader today, is employees who are incapable of independent thought. As Jim Collins has argued, though, in his landmark book Built to Last, there is nothing wrong with a cult-like commitment from employees to specific values. Collins found that architects of visionary companies intentionally encourage this, rather than relying purely on their employees' work ethic, ideals or ability to execute their brief. Cults are gruesome, evil, and horrendous institutions. They prey on people's vulnerabilities, insecurities, and faithfulness. I am by no means encouraging you to replicate their immorality, wickedness, or delusion. I am, however, fascinated and perplexed by how a group of people can become so committed, devoted, and dedicated to a cause, a brand or a mission that they would make the fateful decision to give their life to it. I've sat with CEO after CEO of some of the world's most adored brands, a few of which that have, in their own words, a cult following. Some of them also have a cult-like company culture, and others have referred to a cult mentality when the company was founded. Peter Thiel, the German-American billionaire entrepreneur and co-founder of PayPal, said, "Every company culture can be plotted on a linear spectrum. The best start UPS might be considered slightly less extreme kinds of cults. The biggest difference is that cults tend to be fanatically wrong about something important. People at a successful startup are Fanatically right about something those outside it have missed. Why work with a group of people who don't even like each other? Taking a merely professional view of the workplace, in which free agents check in and out on a transactional basis, is worse than cold. It's not even rational. Since time is your most valuable asset, it's odd to spend it working with people who don't envision any long-term future together. If you look closely at the t-shirts people in San Francisco wear to work, you'll see the logos of their companies, and tech workers care about those very much. The startup uniform encapsulates a simple but essential principle: everyone at your company should be different in the same way, a tribe of like-minded people fiercely devoted to the company's mission. Above all, don't fight the perk war. Anybody who would be powerfully swayed by free laundry pickup or pet daycare would be a bad addition to your team. Just cover the basics and then promise what no others can: the opportunity to do irreplaceable work on a unique problem alongside great people. We've all seen the throwback imagery of a small group of people huddled around computers in a shed, basement, or apartment, building what would go on to be the next big, billion-dollar company. They always seem to look really tired and a little malnourished but incredibly focused. Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Apple started this way, to name a few. All these companies had cult-like attributes in their earliest years, and their founders often attribute that religious dedication, conviction, and obsession to their eventual success. The energy at a startup is like being part of a movement or a cult. Kevin Systrom, co-founder of Instagram. When I was starting the company, I thought, who wants to be in a cult? That sounds horrible. But when you a startup, that's exactly what you want to create. You want to create a company that people are really passionate about. Tony Hsieh, former CEO of Zappos. It's kind of a cult, you know? The energy, the camaraderie, the sense of mission and purpose. Evan Williams, co-founder of Twitter. The 4 stages of building a company. It's my belief, derived from my own experience launching more than 10 successful startups in my conversations with hundreds of successful founders, that the best companies go through an evolutionary process, which does, although it may sound uninviting to some, initially resemble a cult. The 4 stages of a company's life are the cult, growth, enterprise, and decline phases. In the cult or 0 to 1 phase, the founding team members are typically so consumed by their delusional belief, enthusiasm, and urgency, that they go all in, sacrificing their social life, relationships, and, unfortunately, their well-being, to try and get their baby off the ground. In the growth phase, the company is a mess behind the scenes. Employees are overworked, under-resourced and often inexperienced. They don't have the systems, processes or people they need to handle the growth. But they feel like they're on a rocket ship to somewhere great, so they hold onto the ship with great excitement, terror, and hope regardless. In the enterprise phase, people are stable. Their lives tend to have greater balance, employee retention improves, and expectations, processes, and systems are defined. The final phase, decline, comes to all companies eventually, usually because of the risk aversion, complacency, and ostrich effect that I described in Law 23. The most important decision you will make when you launch a company is picking the first 10 people. Each of them represents 10% of your company culture, your values, and your philosophy, so getting those 10 people right and binding them together with the right culture will irreversibly define your company. When a culture is strong, new people become like the culture. When a culture is weak, the culture becomes like the new people. Your 11th person will curiously resemble the other 10 in values and philosophy. I found that when you get enough players together, when you go through the incredible work to find 5 of these players, they really like working with each other because they never had a chance to do that before and they don't want to work with B and C players. And so it becomes self-policing. And they only want to hire more players. And so you build up these pockets of a players and it propagates. And that's what the Mac team was like. They were all a players. Steve Jobs. That initial team of 10 is a window into the culture that you will have when there's 100 of you. This is why companies that become great start out feeling like cults. They were clear on their values, devoted to the cause and obsessed with solving a problem. Although that unsustainable mentality dilutes as it moves through its inevitable life cycle, its essence remains as a set of clear values that continue to permeate through everything the company does. So the question becomes, what are the ingredients of a cult? 1. A sense of community and belonging. Joshua Hart, a professor of psychology at Union College who has studied cults, said, they provide meaning, purpose and belonging. They offer a clear, confident vision and assert the superiority of the group and followers who are craving peace, belonging and security might gain a sense of those things as well as confidence through participation in the group. 2. A shared mission. A cult is a group or movement with a shared commitment to a usually extreme ideology, says Janja Lalic, an expert in cultic studies. They also have a clear shared identity, sometimes a uniform, in business, sometimes a company logo. 3. An inspirational leader. As to the leaders themselves, they typically present themselves as infallible, confident, and grandiose. Their charisma draws people in, Joshua Hart says. 4. An us vs them mentality. Cults tend to have a clear adversary. In the case of the Heaven's Gate cult, civilization as a whole and non-believers were their adversary. In business, it tends to be the industry competitors, other teams with competing missions. When you at a startup, the first thing you have to believe is that you going to change the world. Mark Andreessen, co-founder of Netscape, and Andreessen Horowitz. The 10 steps to building a company culture. 1. Define the company's core values and align them with aspects such as mission, vision, principles, or purpose to create a solid foundation for the organization. 2. Integrate the desired culture into every aspect of the company, including hiring policies, processes and procedures across all departments and functions. 3. Agree upon expected behaviors and standards for all team members, promoting a positive work environment. 4. Establish a purpose that goes beyond the company's commercial goals, fostering a deeper connection for employees. 5. Use myths, stories, company-specific vocabulary, and legends, along with symbols and habits, to reinforce the company culture and embed it in the collective consciousness. 6. Develop a unique identity as a group and cultivate a sense of exclusivity and pride within the team. 7. Create an atmosphere that celebrates achievements, progress, and living the company culture, boosting motivation and pride. 8. Encourage camaraderie, community, and a sense of belonging among team members. Encourage mutual dependence and a collective sense of obligation, reinforcing the interconnected nature of the team. 9. Remove barriers and enable employees to express themselves authentically and embrace their individuality within the organization. 10. Emphasize the unique qualities and contributions of both employees and the collective, positioning them as distinct and exceptional. Why you should not maintain a cult-like culture in the long run. If you're building something to last, for the long term, cultish obsession won't be enough. Cults in any context, and especially in business, are fundamentally unsustainable, emotionally grueling and therefore ineffective at achieving long-term objectives in business and life. The most important overarching principle for anyone hoping to achieve a long-term business goal is to create a culture that is sustainable, where people are authentically engaged with a mission they care about, trusted with a high degree of autonomy, sufficiently challenged in their work, given a sense of forward motion and progress, and surrounded by a caring, supportive group of people that they love to work with and that provide them with psychological safety. If you can achieve this, you're setting yourself up for long-term success. The law, create a cult mentality. A cult-like mentality, and cult-like commitment from staff, can be incredibly useful in the beginning stages of a startup. It can determine the culture and generate the passion required to launch a new business. But as a company grows, it needs to develop in order to achieve longer-term objectives. Cults are not sustainable. If the culture is strong, new people will become like the culture. If the culture is weak, the culture will become like the new people. Law 30. The 3 bars for building great teams. This law shows you how the greatest leaders in the world decide who to hire, fire and promote in their organizations, and why you need to put culture before everything when building a team. Sir Alex Ferguson is widely considered to be the greatest football manager of all time. During his 26 years at the head of Manchester United, he won 38 trophies, and in the summer of 2013, after winning the Premier League one last time, he announced he was retiring at the age of 71. When he first joined the struggling side in 1986, he said the most important thing at Manchester United is the culture of the club. The culture of the club comes from the manager. He emphasized that culture and values, not just players and tactics, determine a team's success. He said that these values must be instilled in players from the moment they join the team, and must be upheld by everyone at the club, from the players and coaches to the staff and executives. A few years ago, Patrice Evra, a player who joined Ferguson's winning Manchester United side in 2006, told me that the manager met him in the backroom of an airport in France ahead of potentially signing him to join the team. Sir Alex wanted to look in my eyes and ask me one question. He looked at me with a steely stare and said, "Are you willing to die for this club?" I replied yes, and he immediately reached across the table and said, "Welcome to Manchester United, son." Ferguson believed that creating a strong, united culture within the club would result in a winning team on the pitch and build a sustainable success over the long term. He was right. No football manager, before or after, has ever managed to dominate with such stability, consistency, and success as Ferguson did. A hallmark of his philosophy was to never let individual players get in the way of his team ethos, culture, or values. He became known for saying the phrase, "Nobody is bigger than the club," in press conferences, and unexpectedly transferring any player that no longer embodied the United way, regardless of how well they were playing, how famous they were, or how much he needed them. I've interviewed 5 former Manchester United players over the last few years, and all of them said that one of Ferguson's greatest strengths was his ability to move star players on, even when they were at the peak of their powers. Rio Ferdinand told me Jaap Stam was the best defender in the world at the time, and Sir Alex said, "See you later." David Beckham was in the form of his career and he let him go. Ruud van Nistelrooy was the top goal scorer at United and he shipped him out the team. The man just saw something early. Under Ferguson's leadership, Beckham became widely considered as the best right-sided midfielder in Europe. But Ferguson grew weary of the constant paparazzi that hounded Beckham following his marriage to pop star Victoria. When his popularity skyrocketed in Manchester, and Beckham became a growing distraction, it was against everything Sir Alex wanted for his team's culture, and the next summer, Beckham was sold to Real Madrid. Another example was Keane, who was United's captain of a golden era, winning 7 titles with the club and steering them to win the treble, FA Premier League, FA Cup, and UEFA Champions League, in 1999. But after training ground arguments and outbursts in interviews in which he criticized teammates, the outspoken midfielder ended up falling out with Ferguson and was sold to Celtic in 2005. Ruud van Nistelrooy was one of the most prolific goal scorers in United's history. But when he stormed out of the stadium after being benched on the last game of the season, he was never seen at Manchester United ever again. Your average manager, in sport, or in business, wouldn't have the guts, foresight and conviction to make such bold pivotal decisions. Sacking your most valuable employee because they're challenging your culture is a problematic thing to do. But every truly great sport or business manager that I've interviewed instinctively knows that the even more problematic thing is letting one bad apple spoil the rest, regardless of their talent. The hardest thing I had to learn was to fire people. You must do it to protect the integrity of the company and the culture of the team. Richard Branson. Barbara Corcoran is the 73-year-old American businesswoman, Shark Tank investor, and founder of a billion-dollar New York real estate empire. In my interview with her, she stressed how critically important it is to remove toxic influences from your team before they infect your other children. Employees. I couldn't wait to fire individuals who were negative and didn't fit. They were ruining my good kids. People who are negative always need somebody to be negative with them. You've got to get rid of them. I never carried a negative person that didn't fit the culture for more than a couple of months. These people are thieves in the night. They take your energy away, and your most valuable asset is your energy. Hesitating to fire someone that I knew was a net negative for my company's culture is my single biggest regret in business. As Corcoran highlights, these people are contagious. They have the toxic power to turn younger, high potential, great team members into negative, average warriors. The cost of one bad apple can be the loss of many good ones. CEO of General Electric. Harvard Business Review undertook a study into the effects of bad employees on a business. The study aimed to understand how new ideas and behaviors can spread among coworkers. Using regulatory filings and employee complaints, the study found that employees were 37% more likely to commit misconduct at work when they encountered a new coworker who had a history of misconduct themselves. Incredibly, this study shows that toxic employees really are contagious. Results show that misconduct in the workplace has a social multiplier of 1.59, which means that each case of misconduct in a company, like a virus, spreads and results in an additional 0.59 cases of misconduct when a misbehaving employee is allowed to remain. Will Phelps, a former researcher at the University of Washington Business School, was asking his wife if things at her work were still bothering her. They're not in the office this week, and the atmosphere is so much better, she said. Phelps' wife was referring to a single coworker who was particularly toxic, regularly picking on and humiliating individuals in her team, which made an already hostile working environment even worse. But when this employee was off sick for a few days, a funny thing happened, recalls Phelps. People started helping each other, playing classical music on their radios and going out for drinks after work. But when he returned to the office, things returned to the unpleasant way they were. She hadn't noticed this employee as being a very important person in the office before he came down with this illness, but, upon observing the social atmosphere when he was gone, she came to believe that he had a profound and negative impact. He truly was the bad apple that spoiled the barrel. Intrigued by the impact of this single individual on a wider team, Phelps and his colleague Terence Mitchell, a professor of business and psychology, combed through 24 published studies about how teams and groups of employees interact, and followed up with their own research to show just how much a single negative team member, someone who avoids taking their fair share of the work, bullies their teammates or is emotionally unstable, can derail an otherwise well-functioning team. And they're more common than you might think. Most people, it turns out, can think of at least one bad apple they've worked with in the course of their career. Their study also indicated that most organizations do not have effective ways of dealing with negative employees, particularly when the negative employee has longevity, experience, or power within the company. They found that negative behavior completely outweighed positive behavior, meaning that a single bad apple can spoil the team's culture, while 1, 2, or 3 good workers cannot unspoil it. They concluded that when a bad apple isn't fired, it can lead to employee disengagement, other employees copying the behavior, social withdrawal, anxiety and fear. This culminates in a deterioration of trust within the team, and further disengagement of team members. The researchers discovered something I've learned time and time again. Throughout my business career, no one person leaving a good company kills it, but sometimes one person staying can. A bad apple can ruin the barrel, but it's important to remember that the barrel can be cleaned. It's important to take action and remove toxic individuals to maintain a positive culture. Oprah Winfrey. The 3 bars: fire, hire, train. Firing someone is never easy. All of the aforementioned great leaders, who Understand the importance of protecting a company culture at all costs. Also, speak of the difficulty, agony, and emotional turmoil of the experience when they have to let someone go. It's this psychological friction, and the ostrich effect it creates, see Law 23, that causes us to procrastinate, second guess ourselves and avoid doing what we know we should do. With this in mind, I created a simple framework, which I've consistently and successfully used within my management teams over the last decade to help us see through this friction, and to clarify which team members should be hired, promoted, and fired. I call this my 3 bars framework. It starts with asking yourself, or your management team, a very simple question in relation to a specific team member. If everyone in the organization had the same cultural values, attitude, and level of talent as this employee, would the bar, the average, be raised, maintained, or lowered? This question doesn't seek similarity in perspectives, experience or interests, diversity of thought, lived experience, or worldview. But it does seek similarity in company cultural values, standards, and attitude. Think of any team you're in, a sports team, a creative team, or the team you're in at work, and now think of one person at random in that team and ask yourself, if everyone in the team embodied their cultural values, would the bar be raised, maintained, or lowered? On this image I've plotted 4 hypothetical people using this question. It's simple. Michael, the bar lowerer, needs to be fired, and Oliver, the bar raiser, needs to be promoted into a management position. As the research demonstrated, Michael will be a disproportionately toxic influence on team culture, and Oliver can become a disproportionately positive influence on team culture if he's given the chance to sit higher in the organization. This framework has also been incredibly useful when assessing new recruits against current team standards. The law, the 3 bars for building great teams. With every hire, you should be looking to raise the bar, and just like Sir Alex Ferguson did, if any current hire, regardless of how many trophies they've won you in the past, becomes a bar lowerer, you must quickly and decisively act to stop their influence destroying the sacred collective culture. The definition of the word company is just group of people. Law 31. Leverage the power of progress. This law shows the most important force for team engagement, motivation, and fulfillment in any organization. If you can make people feel this, they'll love being part of your team. Winning medals seemed so far away, it seemed like such a mountain, in the distance, untouchable. People were thinking, wow, how on earth are we going to get from where we are now to up there? What can we believe in? How do we get some momentum? How do we get some contagious enthusiasm? Sir David Brailsford, former performance director of British Cycling, on the Diary of a CEO. A few years ago I interviewed Sir David Brailsford, who is known as the mastermind behind a theory called marginal gains. His theory was popularized by the story of the 2008 British cycling team and their continued success across multiple Olympic Games. Prior to 2008, British cycling was widely regarded as the laughing stock of the sport. In an effort to fix things, the governing body hired performance director David Brailsford to transform the philosophy, strategy, and culture of the team. Brailsford believed that 1% improvements across all aspects of cycling would aggregate into a significant performance gain. Under his guidance, British cycling stopped thinking about major steps forward and started obsessing over the smallest, easiest details, using antibacterial hand gel to cut down on infections, rubbing alcohol on bicycle tires for better grip, redesigning bike seats for greater comfort, changing the pillows in the athletes' bedrooms to improve their sleep, extensive wind tunnel testing of bikes and racing suits, etc. Brailsford took over, and within 5 years, British cycling won 57% of all road and track cycling gold medals at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and at the 2012 London Olympics set 7 world records and 9 Olympic records. From 2007 to 2017, British cyclists won 178 world championships, 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals and captured 5 Tour de France victories. This made this 10-year span the most successful era for any cycling team in history. In my interview with Brailsford, I asked him how focusing on small, marginal progress caused such tremendous motivation, success and consistency, and he told me, people want a feeling of progression, and if we aim for perfection, we'll fail, because perfection is so far away. So instead of perfection, let's have a little progression, just a little, and that will make us feel good. So, let's identify the basics, get them right, and then next week ask ourselves, what other little things could we do? There are a million things that could impact a cycling performance. Could we, I don't know, change our diet to be slightly more optimal than it is this week, and do that by next week? And everybody goes, yep, we could do that. Okay. What else could we do? Could we do more in the gym this week? Could we alter our attitude slightly? Could you do that? Yeah, we could do that. Okay. So off we go. And then you get to next week and ask, did we do all that stuff? Yeah, we did. We haven't moved a long way, but I tell you what, it felt pretty good. And suddenly you kind of start to get this idea that you're on the move. And when you feel like you're on the move, you feel good about yourself. Tiny progress means a lot to people, and when they feel it, they realize they can do it again tomorrow. Whereas when you're trying to do something big, it's less sustainable. We all go full gas in the gym in January, and then of course by February, we've all stopped again. And why is that? It's quite rare that you can make major change and make it sustainable. But it's quite easy to make small incremental changes and make them stick. And it's the stickability over time, I think, which makes the big difference. We never ever thought about the podiums, or the finish line, or trophies. We didn't talk about that, we thought about the smallest things we could do today to make progress. When you create this culture, people feel the progress, and they're energized. Even more ideas start coming to the surface from the team, and they get adopted too. And a narrative emerges in the team that we're on the move, we're changing, we're doing all the little things because we can be arsed to do the little things that other people can't be arsed to do. And that makes a difference. And I say that quite often in our team, we'll be working late. And I say, right, guys, let's just all get together for a minute. The reason we've been good is because we can be arsed to do all these little things that all these other teams who are now locked up and gone to bed in their hotel can't be bothered to do. And it works, you know, it works, 100%, or it works, been at it 20 years. And it's as much about that kind of enthusiasm and a positivity about embracing and not viewing small change as a chore. Progress is a powerful force. The superpower of small wins. The concept of progress is often perceived as a tangible outcome, yet research continues to show that the true motivational power of progress is more feelings and emotions than facts and stats. As researcher Teresa Amabile notes in the Harvard Business Review, on days when workers have the sense they're making headway in their jobs, or when they receive support that helps them overcome obstacles, their emotions are most positive and their drive to succeed is at its peak. The key phrase here is when workers have the sense they're making headway. How much you actually achieving is pretty much irrelevant to your motivation, but if you feel like you getting somewhere, you be driven to keep going. When joining a poorly motivated, struggling team, the collective psychology resembles that of a double-decker bus broken down on the side of the road with 4 flat tires. Inspiration and collective belief is the energy that all teams run on. It's the cause of their drive, the air in their tires and the fuel in their engine. Sir David Brailsford understood this when he joined the failing British cycling team. He knew that making large tangible accomplishments mattered less at that point than giving the team the feeling that they were accomplishing something, and that's why he focused on the small wins first. Because that's the easiest way to unlock the motivational power of progress, to jumpstart the bus, put petrol in the engine and get the wheels in motion. These small wins matter more because They are so much more likely to occur compared to the big breakthroughs in the world. If we only waited for the big wins, we would be waiting a long time. And we would probably quit long before we see anything tangible come to fruition. What you need instead of the big wins is simply the forward momentum that small wins bring. Teresa Amabile. Through her incredible research, which involved the analysis of nearly 12,000 diary entries and daily rankings of motivation and emotions, Amabile found that making progress in one's work, even incremental progress, is more frequently associated with positive emotions and high motivation than any other workday event. When I interviewed Nir Eyal, the author of the landmark book, Indestructible, which uncovers why humans procrastinate, he asserted that the sole reason why people procrastinate is because they're trying to avoid some form of psychological discomfort in their life. The bigger the task, and the less competent we feel about accomplishing it, the greater the procrastination. That essay you have to write on a topic you don't fully understand, that sensitive issue you have to confront in your relationship, that will likely result in a major argument, that business you want to launch. Without clarity on where you need to start, these challenges feel like mountains to climb. They cause tremendous psychological discomfort, so they inspire tremendous procrastination. The key to overcoming that discomfort and preventing procrastination is to smallify the task into easy, achievable micro goals. Making goals sound and feel achievable is something the great organizational theorist Carl Ewig has explored at length over his decades of researching organizational life. In 1984, Wick published a seminal paper that blamed society's failure to solve big social issues on how we present the challenges to the world. The massive scale on which social problems are conceived often stops innovation and action, he complained. People often define social problems in ways that overwhelm their ability to do anything about them. He went as far as to say that people can't solve problems unless they think they aren't problems. When the magnitude of problems is scaled upward, the quality of thought and action declines, because processes such as frustration, arousal, and helplessness are activated. Therefore, the key to action, confidence, and movement is scaling your challenge down. Small wins may seem unimportant, he concedes, but a series of wins begins to reveal a pattern that may attract allies, deter opponents, and lower resistance to subsequent proposals. Small wins are compact, tangible, upbeat, and non-controversial. Too few leaders understand this. In a seminal article published in the Harvard Business Review in 1968, American psychologist Frederick Herzberg theorized that individuals are most motivated in their jobs when they are provided with opportunities for achievement. However, when Harvard Business Review surveyed almost 700 managers across various companies and industries worldwide, they discovered that most managers, leaders, and CEOs simply didn't believe or understand this. When asked to rank the tools most effective in impacting employee motivation and emotions, a mere 5% of respondents placed making progress in work as the primary motivator, with 95% placing it last or third. Instead, the majority ranked recognition for good work as the most crucial factor in motivating workers and promoting happiness. While recognition undoubtedly enhances an employee's inner work life, it is ultimately dependent upon achievements. As a leader, it is crucial to understand the transformative power of progress and the ways in which it can be nurtured and catalyzed. This knowledge can provide significant influence over employee well-being, innovation, motivation, and creative output. How to create the perspective of progress in teams. Professor Amabile's 5 methods can help you facilitate your team's progress and reap the benefits of low-hanging fruit. 1. Creating meaning. Humans have a deep-seated desire to do meaningful work. Steve Jobs used this to his advantage in 1983, when trying to convince John Sculley that he should leave his extremely successful job at PepsiCo to become Apple's new CEO, by asking him, "Do you want to spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or do you want a chance to change the world?" His strategy was successful. Sculley joined Apple shortly after, because it focused on The meaningfulness of the work that Apple does. Making progress boosts your professional motivation, but only if the work matters to you. In all my companies over the last 10 years, one of the most valuable things we've done is put systems in place that make sure that every team member, in every department, feels the meaningful impact the work is having on the world. In one company we have an internal workplace channel called Impact, which is dedicated to sharing powerful stories, testimonials and feedback about how each team member's efforts has impacted the lives of real people all over the world. Managers cannot leave this to chance, in an increasingly digital world, where we're dealing more in numbers, stats, and screens. It's easier than ever to lose sight of the meaning behind the metrics. When work feels meaningless, motivation evaporates. According to 238 diary entries by workers in a variety of industries, the factor that kills meaning the fastest is a leadership team that dismisses an employee's work or ideas, removes their sense of ownership and autonomy, and asks them to spend time on work that is cancelled, changed or disregarded before it's been completed. 2. Setting clear and actionable goals. It's important for leaders to lay out objectives clearly, so team members know exactly what they need to accomplish. The goal should be broken down into smaller, interim milestones, with a focus on early wins to build momentum. Progress should be tracked to ensure small wins don't go unnoticed. In my companies we use OKRs, objectives and key results, a periodic goal-setting framework, across all teams to ensure that this happens. 3. Providing autonomy. Once the desired outcome is clear, leaders should give their team members space to take charge. Encourage them to map their own path by utilizing their skills and expertise. One of the most important characteristics in all of my teams has been allowing people the space to both fail and succeed. My job as CEO is to play the role of a supportive enabler, not a critical micromanager. 4. Removing friction. Leaders should proactively remove any obstacles, bureaucracy, and sign-off processes that prevent the team from achieving daily progress. This includes identifying and providing resources they need to do their job. As mentioned in Law 20, frequent check-ins with all of my directors has allowed me to do this quickly and decisively. Team members tend to know exactly what's getting in their way, but leaders rarely bother to ask them. And when they do, they rarely act quickly enough to resolve it. This causes a decay in trust, and team members become increasingly reluctant to speak up about friction causing issues in the future. 5. Broadcasting the progress. Leaders need to point out, publicize and praise progress as loud, far and wide as they possibly can. Recognition reinforces behavior, but it also acts as evidence to adjacent teams that progress is possible for them too. In every company and team I run, the head of the team is asked to broadcast a weekly update to the entire company detailing all the progress their team has made that week. This ritual has been incredibly powerful in creating a collective sense that we're going somewhere, as Sir David Brailsford would say, and when people feel like they're going somewhere, they're more motivated, feel happier and are more engaged with leadership. The law, leverage the power of progress to solve problems, encourage and celebrate small wins. This provides continuous forward momentum, which creates an atmosphere of success and a positive sense that a team is moving towards their bigger goals. Employees are most motivated when they are engaged with the work that they're doing, and feel like they are making a difference. Law 32. You must be an inconsistent leader. This law will teach you how to become a truly great manager and leader by being inconsistent. I sat down with Manchester United legend Patrice Evra, who played left back under Sir Alex Ferguson for almost 10 years, to find out what, in his own words, made Ferguson the greatest sporting manager of all time. Patrice instantly referred to one day in 2007 that perfectly highlighted the manager's brilliance. It was the afternoon of February 4, 2007, a cold, dreary Sunday in London. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle was falling as Manchester United arrived at White Hart Lane Stadium, then the home of Tottenham Hotspurs. The Red Devils had started the season on formidable form, sitting at the top of the league, 3 points clear, and were today facing an on-form home team who were determined to take down the league leaders. The first half of the match was a tense and tight affair, with neither team able to gain a clear advantage. Both teams battled fiercely for possession, with the midfield a blur of flying boots and sliding tackles. However, a fortuitous penalty awarded to Manchester United in the last minute of the first half gave them a lucky 1-0 lead as they headed into the dressing room at halftime. As the team entered the dressing room, Ferguson walked in, sat down, and said nothing for 3 minutes. The room was eerily quiet as the players sat nervously, avoiding eye contact with the silent manager. They knew that when Ferguson sat in silence, it wasn't a good sign. Evra was playing what he would later describe as the best game of his life. He had been a constant thorn in the side of the Tottenham defense, making surging runs up the left flank and delivering pinpoint crosses. Patrice was smiling, drinking water and being congratulated by his teammates as he caught the gaze of Ferguson, who was looking straight at him. He recalls, "I'm playing the best game of my life. I promise you, I was on fire. I came back to the dressing room, I was relaxed, happy, drinking some water. My teammates were congratulating me, saying wow. Patrice, you're on fire." Then Ferguson walked in, sat down for 3 minutes and locked his eyes on me. He asked me, "Patrice, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm okay, boss." He then asked me, "Are you tired?" Seriously, I looked around, thinking his question must be a prank. Maybe there was some hidden camera and he was winding me up. The players around me were equally confused. "No, I'm fine," I replied. "Why did you pass the ball back to the keeper?" he continued. "Because I didn't have any options in front of me, that was the only option I had," I explained. "If you do that again, you will come and watch the rest of the fucking game." Sat next to me. "This is the worst game you've played since you've played for Manchester United," he shouted. "If you pass it back again, I promise you, you will never play for Manchester United again." I kept my mouth shut. I was biting my lips, but I never wanted to answer him back in front of my teammates. People were in shock. Everyone was thinking, what's going on? Manchester United came out of the dressing room for the second half with renewed energy, a fire in their bellies and an increased focus. They dominated the second half, scoring 3 more goals and securing a 4-0 victory over the home team. It was a performance that would go down in the history books as one of Manchester United's greatest away victories. The Independent called it a divine demolition from a team at the height of their powers. Patrice was still perplexed by the berating he'd received from Ferguson. At halftime, I took my shower, got my clothes on, and I couldn't wait to sleep and come back to the training ground the next day to speak to him about what had happened. The next day I knocked on his office door, and he invited me in. "Oh Patrice, how are you, my son? Come and sit down," Ferguson said. I replied, "Boss, what happened yesterday? Why did you say that to me?" "Patrice, you were the best player on the pitch. But you know, Cristiano Ronaldo started doing too many skills, some of your teammates were wasting their chances on the ball, and when you play for Manchester United, you need to score 1 goal, and then a second, and then a third. You can't just score 1 goal. You were the best player, my son, get out of my office." He was whistling and singing and laughing. He knew I could take the fire. He shouted at me because he wanted to send a message to the other players, to Cristiano, to make sure they kept focused and respected Tottenham. So, he picked the best player on the pitch, a player he knew could take it, so that every other player on our team thought, if he's killing the best player on the pitch, I better improve my game. That's what I mean by managing, that's Fergie. To my surprise, every Manchester United player I've spoken to and interviewed said Sir Alex Ferguson didn't care about tactics, strategies and formations. He cared primarily about getting the best out of each individual. The team's culture and their attitude, he didn't want them ever to become complacent. Gary Neville, who spent his entire playing career at Ferguson's Manchester United, told me, He knew how to tap into your heart, no matter who you were, he knew how to tap into you. He would talk about my grandparents. When he wanted to motivate me. My granddad was injured in the war. He still has shrapnel in his shoulder from the battle. So, Sir Alex would say, what about your grandparents, getting up every single day, putting their tie on, working hard, going off to war? When Sir Alex would say that to me, I would keep going. When he spoke to someone else, he would say something completely different. He would tap into every individual, in a different way, to make sure they would never give in. Rio Ferdinand, who played as centre-back and captain for Manchester United for 12 years, told me that Ferguson's greatest attribute was his ability to know every individual and to be a different shaped jigsaw piece to all of them. He understood people. He wouldn't treat two players the same. Blanket treatment isn't the best way to treat a team. Everyone's different, everyone takes advice differently. Everyone takes criticism differently. And that's why the leader or manager needs to know the individuals. This was one of Sir Alex Ferguson's greatest traits. He knew everything, about everyone. When my granddad was in hospital once, even though he'd only met him twice, he knew my granddad's favorite drink, and flowers turned up at my mum's house. He knew that mattered to me. It's little things like that made me fight harder for him. The following quotes from other past players of Ferguson sum up what made him such an exceptional manager. He had different ways of dealing with different players. He knew how to get the best out of everyone. Peter Schmeichel. He was very hard on me, but he had to be. He saw something in me that he didn't see in other players, and he pushed me to be the best I could be. David Beckham. He always knew when to give me a kick up the backside and when to put an arm around me. He knew how to treat different players differently. Ryan Giggs. He treated me differently than the other players, but in a good way. He pushed me to be better, and I think that's why I became the player I am today. Wayne Rooney. He treated me differently from the other players. He would always talk to me and give me advice. He helped me to become a better player. Cristiano Ronaldo. The Art of Being an Inconsistent Leader. Every book dedicated to leadership and management espouses the virtues of consistency, predictability, and fairness as hallmarks of great leaders. However, my decade-long study of truly exceptional managers has revealed the opposite to be true. My own experience leading more than 1,000 individuals across 4 companies has taught me that my ability to adapt to each individual, to be inconsistent in my approach and to skillfully shift my emotions like a chameleon in order to elicit the best from every member of my team, positively correlates with my ability to motivate. As we have explored in previous laws in this book, humans are not the rational, logical, and analytical creatures we presume ourselves to be. We are emotional, illogical, and driven by a multitude of emotional impulses, fears, desires, insecurities, and childhood experiences. In light of this, a one-size-fits-all, reason-information and facts-centric approach to leadership is deeply inadequate for inspiring passion, motivation, and action among any group of people. For us as leaders, to become the complementary puzzle piece for each member of our team, we must be as inconsistent, emotionally variable and fluctuating as the people in our teams are. Rio Ferdinand recounts how Ferguson was a masterful actor, able to feign any emotion, from anger to elation, in order to evoke the emotions he believed would best serve the team's success. He was so calculated. We talked about it all the time amongst the players. The way he spoke, he would go on TV after a defeat and intentionally, furiously, hammer the referee to deflect attention away from the players. He did that to remove the focus from the team, to make sure we weren't feeling down about ourselves, so that we would be motivated for the next game. He was so calculated. The best man manager. The law: you must be an inconsistent leader. It is impossible to seamlessly blend into a team as a jigsaw piece unless you Comprehend the unique shape of each of your team members. Sir Alex Ferguson's acumen in this regard was legendary, as attested to by his former players and staff, and even rival managers. He possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of everything from the hobbies of his players' wives to the names of their pets, and as Rio Ferdinand told me, even their grandfather's preferred brand of whiskey. More significantly, he knew that every member of his team was propelled by vastly different motivators. While one player may have thrived under Ferguson's infamous hair-dryer treatment, where he would shout angrily at them in the dressing room or on the training ground, another may have required a more compassionate approach, and still another may have been motivated by a more hands-off approach. This is why Ferguson didn't have to be the tactical mastermind that many assume he must have been, but rather an emotional savant. When you're in the business of motivating people, emotional management is everything. Great leaders are fluid, flexible, and full of fluctuation. They are whatever shape they need to